We'll just wait another moment or two and then we'll get started. Thanks everybody for hopping on. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Betty, please continue to let folks in. Usually that we have more hop on as we get into the conversation, but good morning to everyone. Welcome to Grow Cedar Valley's Town Hall meeting. This morning we're welcoming Cedar Falls Mayor Rob Green and the recently appointed Cedar Falls Police Chief Craig Berte. Before we get started, I do have a couple of housekeeping things. So this session will be recorded and will be shared on some of our social media platforms. But if anyone would like a copy of this, you're welcome to reach out and we'll be happy to provide that. Also, if you would turn your microphones off, that would be helpful so there's not any background distraction. And then if there are comments or questions at all, please feel free to use the chat box. They can come directly to me, or you can send them to everyone, and then both Mayor Green and Chief Berte can see those, but I'm happy to share those with them too. And typically in these housekeeping announcements, I usually mention where the restrooms are, but since you're all going to be working from your own environment and remotely, I trust you've already figured that out. So I won't need to brief you on all those kinds of things. So anyway, welcome this morning. Let's get started. Mayor Green and Chief Berte. First of all, again, welcome and thank you for being with us this morning. We wanted to have this a month or so ago and it didn't work out for people's schedules. So we've got a good turnout this morning to listen to our conversation. But Craig, I'll start with you. If you would please just share a little bit about yourself, your background. You're obviously not new to Cedar Falls local government, but in the community, but why don't you share a little bit about your background, please?
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I'll do my best with the virtual meeting. You know, I attend a lot of meetings this way, but I'll have to say I'm usually not the one doing a lot of talking. Usually it's council meetings and things like that. So, you know, thanks for the opportunity. I've still got some of my notes and things from competing for the police chief process. So I'm going to use a little bit of that just to be thorough. But I've been in the Cedar Falls Police Department for 30 years. I've served as an investigator, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, and then I was the assistant chief for 4 years. I've got a Bachelor of Arts. I went to Iowa Central Community College and I got my bachelor's degree at UNI after I'd worked at the police department for a few years. I've attended my command school at the Southern Police Institute in University of Louisville. And I have a note on here. I was a graduate of the Cedar Valley Leadership class in 2001. So a former graduate. I've been married to my wife, Molly, for 22 years. We have 5 kids. We have somebody at UNI, or we have a daughter at UNI, a daughter at Hawkeye Community College, a daughter at the high school, a daughter at P Junior High, and a son at Orchard Hill Elementary. So we're big supporters of the public school system, and we're good customers for them too. As I look back on my career, you know, the only unique training I have a pretty typical police career. I did a lot of training in accident investigation. So I went out and did the measuring and computed speeds and things for our fatality accidents for about 17 or 18 years. I've served as an investigator doing sex crimes back in the late 90s. Other than that, my police career is pretty typical. And then also, since we're a public safety department, I've been cross-trained as a firefighter since 2005. So I've served in that capacity, you know, really for 15 years now. And then along with my police career, I served in the military for 3 years as a military policeman back in the 80s. I stayed in the Army Reserve or the National Guard for a total of 27 years. And I just retired a couple of years ago in 2012. I served as a command sergeant major my last 10 years, which was the highest enlisted rank in the military. I'm very proud of my military service. I'm thrilled that I'm retired. That's a young man's game. I had 2 one-year deployments, and on my second deployment in Afghanistan in 2010, I was awarded a Bronze Star. So I'm proud of my military service. I'm glad that it was early in life and that I'm done with it. So that's a little bit about me, or a little introduction.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And Mayor Green, so as I mentioned earlier, Chief Berte is not new to the department or to the community. Could you share a little bit about the selection process and the what you went through, what the city went through in order to hire Chief Berte?
Certainly. So the a process began back in January when the Director of Public Safety, Jeff Olson, decided that was the right time for him to draw away from his police chief responsibilities and to just be the public safety director, which is allowed under our city code. So when that happened, there was a vacancy in the police chief spot, and because then Assistant Chief Berte, because he was the assistant, he was able to fleet up to be the acting police chief. So he was in that role for the entire time between January to when the appointment was officially made in August. And during that, like we had interviews out or applications in February, and we received those back. Ended up with 5 qualified candidates, and we narrowed that down to 3. So it was 2 internal and then 1 external. And let's see, back in April and May, we did had those 3 finalists either come in. I don't remember, Chief, for those. Actually, no, they were visitors, so they came into the city. That's right, because I interviewed them all on Channel 15 individually for about an hour. So that got the public a chance to see the 3 finalists. And then we also had some stakeholder group meetings with the community leaders. And I felt like that was a very important thing for us to do, to get the buy-in and the input of experts in the community in different fields. So each of the 3 candidates interviewed with those groups as well. And then from that, I was given a recommendation by Director Olson, which is how our code is how it works for appointments. Is the public safety director gives a recommendation to the administrator, then the administrator gives a recommendation to the mayor. And I didn't feel that I was beholden to any of those recommendations. They were important to me, but I wanted to have internalized, like, this is my decision and these are the reasons that I'm using in order to make that. And I feel like that's just a very important part of the mayor's function, is not just forwarding suggestions and recommendations, but making my own. So did that, had the documentation ready in late July, or excuse me, late June, but I wanted to wait until after we'd had our special election, because my seat was open on city council. Council members had appointed someone into that seat, and I just felt it was important enough as a community decision to have a full slate of elected representatives who were making that decision. So they had their runoff on August 4th, and I was able to send the appointment letter soon after, and then council voted on that, and that is how then Assistant Chief Berte became Chief Berte.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Chief Berte, I think we've talked in the past one-on-one, but for the rest of the group, what are your goals for the Cedar Falls Police Department? Or what will change with your leadership, if anything?
Well, I've got some bullets that I'll go over. You know, one thing I would say, I always tell as we went through this process, I don't have any dramatic or significant changes that I'd be making, because I did serve as the assistant police chief for the last 4 years. And really, if I had a good idea, or if I thought there was something good to do, I should have been working on it the last 4 years and not waiting, until it was my chance to be the chief. I would say probably the most important thing we're going to do is continue our strong relationships we have with law enforcement here in the community. We work daily with the Sheriff's Department, UNI, and the Waterloo Police Department. I'm proud to say everything is on a first name basis with them too, among all the command groups and the lieutenants and captains. I don't know if it was always that way, but we just pick up the phone and it's by first name getting things done. I'll want to make sure that Cedar Falls is doing what we've always done. Hopefully we're providing good customer service, proactive enforcement of, parking, traffic, and alcohol laws, looking for that balance that the Cedar Falls Police are out enforcing the Cedar Falls ordinance and being proactive and being consistent with it. Continue to use technology as we have done. An example of that would be with our cameras in the downtown and with downtown and the College Hill area. Whatever is out there for proactive strategies and law enforcement, that we're doing that and staying on the cutting edge. Continue our bike patrols, gator patrols, things that we do with the UNI Police Department, and just being proactive, being out there in the community. Probably the very most important would be, continue our efforts to have a diverse workforce. We've always been, we've had the highest percentage of female police officers in the state of Iowa for a large department for the 3 decades I've been here. So we definitely want to do that. We want a diverse workforce. We want an educated workforce. We require 2 years of college on our police department, and we've done that also for 30 years, and we'll want to continue to do that. But it is a challenge getting applicants just because that starts to limit your applicant pool. I've got a note here, making the best use of our personal resources. Public safety employees are costly, so we want to be efficient. We want to make the best use of our tax dollars. One example of how costly a public safety employee is here in Iowa is we've got a fantastic retirement system. And for every dollar I make, the city contributes 26 cents into my retirement. It's about 26, 27%. That's an incredible rate. That's great for our fire and police employees, but fire and police employees in Iowa are expensive. And so, we want to make the best use of them that we can. And the last note really that I have is continue our partnership with code enforcement. For my 30 years here at the police department, we've always had some relationship with code enforcement. We've even had years where it was a police officer doing code enforcement. But, we really believe that, the city working together through code enforcement, through the police that are out there 24 hours a day, keeping the, city cleaned up, keeping signs picked up, helping with, blighted properties and things like that. So we'll want to continue working with the community services department in that respect. So those are really some of the goals that I'll focus on and that I can think of offhand. But, probably the most important is hiring good people, hiring great people, and, just keeping up on technology.
You've touched on several things that I want to get back to, but one of them on your recruiting process or your hiring process. So you've acknowledged that it's limited because of some of the requirements. Do you see that changing some of the requirements so that you have a broader, diverse applicant pool?
Well, the standard for law enforcement in Iowa is just a high school education. Mm-hmm. And so that's what most police and sheriff's departments recruit to. There are some departments that require a 2-year degree. There are some departments that require a 4-year degree, although they're very limited. And then in federal law enforcement, everything's a 4-year degree. So the DCI, FBI, Border Patrol, Secret Service. Our 2-year requirement, we feel has brought us great candidates, but it does limit your applicant pool. Mm-hmm. And when you get to a time like this, where there's such a negativity about law enforcement in general in the nation, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that the sheriff's department just tested a couple of weeks ago and they had 6 people show up. We're in an applicant testing process right now, and I have, I can count my applications on one hand. Now we're not done yet, but we've had some low numbers for the last few years. That's going on across the nation. We're still getting great candidates. We're getting females. We're getting a diverse applicant pool. So I don't think we're in trouble by any means, but what's going on with law enforcement in nature sure doesn't help. And we kind of went through this in 2016 and 17 after Ferguson, Missouri, and those things going on. There was not a lot of people that were raising their hands, said it's a great time to be in law enforcement right now.
Right. So I imagine those are additional future conversations about how you either adjust or adapt or expand or enhance the applicant or the recruiting process so that you get more folks to be interested in it. The other thing you mentioned that you are cross-trained as a PSO. And that's not a new acronym to anyone who's listening this morning. What do you see? I mean, obviously it's been in place longer than it's been, making headlines since what, 08 or
we really started cross-training in 2005, the city did.
Okay. What though, I mean, obviously that there were a lot of decisions that had to be made recently in order for that to keep moving forward. How do you see that your leadership with the PSO model affecting the police department?
Well, I hope I set a great example for the officers too. Being the police chief or assistant chief or detective captain, I've had a take-home car. In fact, the mayor and I, we had a conversation yesterday, but I personally have been to more fires and been on a hose line inside a home fighting more fires in Cedar Falls than any of the firefighters, only because I respond right from my house and help out. But the PSO program, it works for Cedar Falls. It's great for our community. It makes the best use of our firefighters and our police officers. And for this group too, when I say firefighters and police officers, everybody's cross-trained. Everybody is a police officer and a firefighter. A third of them are assigned to the fire division. 2/3 of them are assigned to the police division. And those that are assigned to the fire division do 100% fire tasks. Those that are assigned to the police department do 100% police tasks. But when needed, they help each other. And I've got a great example from a few weeks ago. I can't remember the exact details, but in the morning we had a fire. We had several people from the police side went over and helped at the fire department in a fire. Later on that night, police was getting overwhelmed. Some of the excess firefighters that were idle and not on a task at that time went down the locker room, put on a police uniform, helped the police. We had a combative subject, here in the station. You have a couple other firefighters help with that. Everybody's cross-trained. So it has a lot of advantages for our city. I forget the specific question now, but.
Oh, no. And actually, I've kind of caught myself after I asked the question. I'm guessing everyone that's watching knows that PSO is public safety officer, but I should have probably said that, said the whole term, what that was, but no, you did fine. I just was wondering if there were any changes because of the PSO under your leadership that might be changing moving forward.
I can't think of significant changes. The one thing that we do have to do internally is we've had obviously a very public controversy. There's been things going on. You have these external factors affecting how we operate. But internally, probably the one thing we need to settle out is what are going to be those training levels? What are going to be the training levels we maintain for our people assigned to the police division, which we've had for 3 decades, or longer than that, since 1865. And then what are the training levels that we're going to have for a public safety officer who works in the police division but maintains their certifications cross-trained as a firefighter. Some people publicly who don't like the program will say it's this incredible challenge, there's no way you can do it. But the one thing I would say to any of them is on all the volunteer departments in our nation, how do those people maintain their skills as a firefighter and every day, work at a body shop, or they're a banker or a realtor, or, so the same type of thing. Figuring out what those training balances are, because there is a training requirement and that does take time. So.
Right. And Mayor, anytime you want to hop in on any of these topics, please feel free.
Sure. And I didn't say during the appointment process when I talked about that one of my big considerations for selecting Chief Berte was I saw him not as a change agent, because I feel like right now we don't need a change agent. What we're looking for is stability. And I also heard that from the surrounding police chiefs and law enforcement professionals who had their stakeholder interview with Chief Berte. And when I asked Sheriff Tony Thompson, since he was kind of the chair or the spokesman for that group, I asked his opinions and his considerations. And the second place, or the runner-up for this, Derek Turner, also was an excellent candidate, but I saw him as more of a change agent, when right now, with the controversy of the PSO model, I want it to just settle down for a while and to cement in some of these changes. And certainly, along with the rest of the staff and hopefully with council as well, we're interested in reviewing it to see what's effective, what's not. As Chief Berte alluded to that, or mentioned, the training requirements is huge for me. Like what standards should the residents of Cedar Falls expect of a public safety officer? And should they be different for somebody who's assigned to fire versus assigned to police? So very much want to have those discussions in the coming year. And in some ways, certainly we have to defer to the judgment of police and fire because they're the experts in the field. But still, we have a responsibility as the mayor and as the council. We're ultimately responsible for public safety in the city. So we need to understand what the criteria is going to be, and we need to agree to those criteria. We wouldn't design them, but we need to be on board with them as well. And I feel Chief Berte is certainly very accommodating to that and understands that unique role with the elected officials.
One of the questions that came up, and you kind of mentioned this too, Chief Berte, when folks knew that we were going to be visiting this morning, was, would you ask them, how do you determine, with UNI having a public safety department or crew or troop or whatever they're called, and Cedar Falls Police Department, how do you determine who is official at which kinds of interactions?
Do you mean like when we're working with UNI together?
Yeah, or, right. So is the UNI Public Safety Department just the geographic area that is the campus that they oversee? Or, and then when is Cedar Falls Police Department part of those transactions?
Yep, that's a great question. So the UNI Police Department, they're all state certified police officers. They can enforce the law anywhere in the state of Iowa. So really they're an equivalent to a state trooper or anything like that. Their geographical area, though, does lie entirely within the city of Cedar Falls. So, you know, they take care of their geographical area, their buildings, their property. We take care of the rest of the city. We work with UNI all the time. We have a great relationship with them. We work large events with them. You know, nearly every large event, we're part of working alongside them with the Sheriff's Department and the State Patrol. And then our night shifts interact nightly, because so much of the things that happen with young people and alcohol and things in the middle of the night, you know, it's occurring in that College Hill area. Well, that encompasses the residential area around it, but obviously encompasses the dorms and the property on the campus. We do their marijuana testing, a lot of their drug testing for them. So we work with UNI all the time. We do joint bike patrols with them. But their focus is take care of the physical assets and the people at the University of Northern Iowa, and ours is the larger the city. So similar roles, but a little different. So
Right.
Friends with all of them. So
I'm sure. So I was going to move on to the social, racial, unsettling issues that have happened not only in our community but across the nation. And I know that you and Chief Olson, or Public Safety Director Chief Olson, and the mayor were part of one of the first gatherings at the Public Safety Building after George Floyd incident. But a question did just come in that's similar to that, and it reads, what is, certainly you're not responsible for the history of any of this, but or for the inflammatory actions of other people, but what do you see as your role in rebuilding trust between police, broadly speaking, and communities of people who distrust police and lack confidence in the fairness of law enforcement?
Well, you know, I would say, you know, this is a large national debate, and everybody's seen part of it, but I don't know who said it, but, you know, a bad cop is bad for good cops. And so, you know, there's nobody more upset when they see a police officer do something bad than your good cops. And, you know, hopefully the majority of them are good cops. You know, I feel the part that I can hopefully influence or have an impact on is just here in the Cedar Valley, you know, being open, being honest, you know, being able to talk about change, talk about the issues going on. You're right. You know, we had, I think, I probably worked 7 or 8 different rallies or protests or gatherings here in Cedar Falls throughout the summer. Every one of them went off great. They were very peaceful. We had no problems. Several of them, we had great dialogue, and definitely the great dialogue with the stakeholders who are organizing the events. There are sometimes some people maybe on the edges of the event that I don't feel are very value added or anything, but the people that you talk with who are there for all the right reasons, the events have gone great. So, you know, I feel my role is to lead the department, hold officers accountable, employ technologies that help to hold the department accountable, put policies in place, you know, that are appropriate. And, you know, the best I can do is just have that dialogue with people. And I think I've got several great relationships, you know, through the Human Rights Commissions and other people that I've met through the years. We've been part of initiatives, you know, really obviously before George Floyd, but they probably were a result of Ferguson, Missouri, you know, years ago in 2016. So I'll keep being part of those events and getting our command staff and our officers involved. And you know, the one common thing I would say that comes down to whenever I talk to people is hiring the right people with the right personality and the right attitude, and you know, giving them the proper training and holding them accountable. So there's a lot of things you can talk about, and really, as I look across the screen here and all the people I'm talking to, as you know, it's about hiring the right people with the right attitude. So we hopefully are vetting them through our interview process. I'm a big believer in the educational standard. We've raised our educational standard for promotions here at the Cedar Falls Public Safety Department, and we've got some pushback from people. And the more I'm involved in the social justice issue and all that, the more I'm a believer we need to be raising the educational standard, not lowering it. and that, there's a reason for that. And I hope there's a time we can raise our educational standard for hiring. It's just, we also have to get some, cops and firemen coming in the door though too.
Mhm. Very good. Well, and we just came off, Grove Cedar Valley just came off our Economic Inclusion Summit with the University of Northern Iowa and several other stakeholders, and Mayor Green was participating. And we all recognize that having these hard and healthy conversations is going to be necessary moving forward. And I don't know, Mayor, if you want to hop in on this, but so I'm guessing across every strand of the government, both Cedar Falls, Waterloo, and surrounding areas, there are going to be these conversations. Is there anything more specific that you see as a result of knowing that these conversations and or decisions are going to be made that might be affecting people based on economic or diversity inclusion? Do you see any of those changing or popping up or being handled differently?
I can't think of anything right now. I think that we just need to stay involved with the conversation. I know you guys met Chief Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to Waterloo. I think he's the right guy at the right time. Thrilled working with him, have learned a lot from him. He is a smart guy. And so I think just having the conversations and staying in touch with the stakeholders. I talk with Jamad Salas all the time from Waterloo, and he's somebody that I didn't even know earlier this spring, but he was spearheading a lot of the rallies and getting together and other things. So I built a friendship with him. I built plenty of other friendships through the years. In 2017, 18, I was part of a group. So, I think having those dialogues and those relationships is really one of the best things we can do. But also we've got to hire smart people. We've got to train them right and hold them accountable. So. Good
point. Mayor, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, when I went through the appointment process, I reached out to LaTanya Graves. She's the president of the Waterloo NAACP, and I hadn't spoken with her previously. I didn't know who she was, but we had a good conversation. I asked her specifically, like, are there any concerns out there for Craig Berte? Like, do you know any complaints that have been filed or any issues? Because I wanted to get that out prior to the appointment. I wanted to make sure there was no community concerns. And she said that there was nothing listed for him, and that they had no issues with his appointment. I feel like those sorts of opportunities to reach out and to gain the input of groups like the NAACP is really important. And I want to strengthen those relationships going forward. So LaTanya feels comfortable calling me if anything comes up. There are concerns I have right now for just documenting the history of racism in Cedar Falls. And when I brought that note up at Economic Inclusion Summit, I showed an abstract that a Cedar Falls high school teacher had that showed a Cedar Falls neighborhood. It was the Cedar Heights neighborhood back in the 40s when it was platted. It said specifically in the abstract that it couldn't be sold to anyone other than of the Caucasian race. And that's important to have those sorts of realizations or to acknowledge what our history has been, and that to view that the fact that Cedar Falls is 92% white right now isn't by accident. And what can we do, and what can the police department do to show that we are as welcoming and as accommodating as we say we are, or that we believe we are? And we can't do that unless we acknowledge where that hasn't happened in the past, and to own up to it and move forward from it. So just even having that acknowledgement from Cedar Falls residents that there has been a problem is a big part of moving forward.
Right, absolutely. So anybody has questions, please put those in the chat box, or if you want to turn your microphone off, go ahead and hop on. But in closing, Mayor and Chief Berte, are there any other areas that we should have touched on or that I didn't get around to that you'd like to include in your comments to the group?
No, I would, since this is a pretty good sized group, one thing I would say is talking about the PSO program and the controversy, and I live here in Cedar Falls, work here in Cedar Falls. So obviously I've had the conversation outside work hundreds or thousands of times. And, one thing I always tell people is Cedar Falls, our ambulance service has come out of our hospital for the last 30, 40 years since an agreement in the 1980s. And so our police department is not that busy of a police department. Our fire department is not that busy of a fire department. We have that capacity to cross train and help each other. And that the whole goal of the PSO program is to have the least amount of public employees providing fire and police services to keep taxes down and to use them most effectively. So our extra police people go over and help fire when there's a fire. Our extra fire people go over and help police when there's a police event, and that we have that capacity to do it. And that's how I always break it down. And I talk to people in the public. Oftentimes their response is, hey, that makes sense. So I have an audience here. I thought it was a chance just to say that. And I don't need to break it down probably for the people in this group because they're smart people, but that really is what it's about. I always tell people, don't compare us to Waterloo. Just like if we were in the Des Moines area, I don't think Windsor Heights or Altoona or West Des Moines wants to be compared to Des Moines too. Things are different for the suburbs there. They provide fire services all different ways that you go around the suburbs of the Des Moines area. So that's just an analogy that I always use when I talk to people and they ask about it, and just to kind of break it down, that it's all about making the most efficient use of our employees and that we do have the capacity to do it. So it doesn't work for every community, and I would not suggest it for other communities. And I don't like it when the media does that. So.
Right. Good point. Good point. Well, the other point of this conversation is so people are familiar with you. Most people, actually, I'm looking at the attendees, they probably already know you, but it's more to introduce you as the current police chief, recently appointed police chief. And anyone on this list knows that they can reach out to you one-on-one at any time. And I don't know what's the best way. Do you prefer a phone call? Do you want a text? Or do you want an email for folks that have additional questions moving forward?
They could get a hold of me anyway. I check my emails, really all day long, every day. So email is probably the best. It's craig.berte@cedarfalls.com. And I do see a lot of names. I see a lot of names of people I borrowed money from through the years. In a banking capacity, yeah.
But the most important part, did you pay it back? I mean, if you're going to say you're borrowing money, were you good for it?
I think I did, yeah. So.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't see any of the questions in the chat box. I want to thank you, Chief Berte and Mayor Green, for spending your time with us this morning. These are, like I said before everybody hopped on, these have become really important formats. People prefer these quick conversations where we can get the most current information, and you both have done that wonderfully this morning. So thank you for being here, and thank you to the rest of the participants who joined us this morning, and we'll look forward to our next town hall meeting in the next few weeks.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Grow Cedar Valley.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good week, everyone.